Welcome everyone, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we are going to talk about citing and using diverse sources. This is one of a series of webinars that we are offering in the Fall 1 semester for 2021. We have many more webinars and other services that are available at the Writing Center. Most students will come and work with us through what we call asynchronous appointments, which is to say you reserve a time. By that time, you go ahead and upload a copy of your paper, any special requests for feedback, and we will go ahead and send you feedback via email. One of the advantages of having an asynchronous appointment is that you could be working until very late in the evening and upload your paper for your 11:30 appointment, go to bed, and then we'll go ahead and send you feedback, and you don't need to stay up any later. We also have real-time appointments, which are generally helpful if you have a lot of questions that you want to ask, or you want to get feedback in real time to be able to ask follow-ups. So an asynchronous appointment, you can just schedule right away using our WC online scheduling system. A phone or Zoom appointment, just go ahead and send us a request to onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. It is helpful to include a variety of times that you are available so that we can better match you up with our staff. And whichever you choose, we're certainly happy to help you. With the real-time appointments, we can usually grant requests provided it's not in week 7 when everyone is very busily trying to get their final papers in. And we have a variety of resources available through the Online Writing Center website, including recordings of webinars such as these, paper templates, sample papers, blog posts on specific topics, and other resources. Let us pass through this schedule of some of our upcoming webinars, and let me mention that the APA course paper template that you see listed at the top here is something that I am going to be using later in this, and if you'd like to follow along, I strongly recommend that you download a copy yourself and have that ready to go. If you're watching this on video, this is a good place to pause and go ahead and get that, and then resume once you've downloaded a copy of the template. All right, our main time is going to be divided into 3 different areas today. First, we're going to talk about citation basics in APA style. Then we're specifically going to talk about how to cite the sources that are required in HIED's A622 Assignment 1, Understanding Today's College Students. And then we're going to branch from that into understanding how to synthesize sources and how to indicate that, which is very closely related to citations. All right, with no further ado, let's talk about citations in APA style. Now, almost all of our online classes at ACU use APA style. The exception is our Graduate School of Theology, where some of the classes will use the very particular citation style that is developed by the Society of Biblical Literature and is used when you're doing in-depth theological study. That's adapted from Chicago style. We've got a guide for that on our website, but it is, shall we say, the God exception to the norm. Most of our classes, which is to say everything outside of the graduate school, will use APA style, and that's what we're talking about today. So in APA style, we have 2 very closely related concepts: referencing and citing. So the reference section in APA style is a guide for locating a particular source of information. And that guide, all those references are collected in a list at the end of the paper. So we have the reference, individual reference or reference entry is just corresponding to one source. These are collected into a list. That list is the reference section at the end of your paper. Now, a citation, on the other hand, is a shorthand key to the entry in the reference list. And because it's a shorthand, it contains just 2 or 3 pieces of information. Those are to say, we have the author information, who wrote it. We have the date, normally just the year that it was published. And if you are quoting, you are required to include the page number if it's paginated, if it has page numbers, the paragraph number if it doesn't, like a web page, or a timestamp if it's not something that is a textual source, like a video or a recording of music. Now, you do have the option of including a quotation for a paraphrase. Most students will do that just as a bit of note-taking to help them see where to go find additional information if they need to expand a section. But it's only actually required if you're doing a direct quotation. All right, so let's look at what an APA reference is composed of. Well, we've got who wrote it. It's going to be a little bit more detailed than in a citation. When was it published, which again may have a little bit more detail. What's it called? That part is not included in the citation. And how do you find it, which often has a bit more information. So for a book with one author, we'd have something like this. Watson, J, 2011, Nursing, University Press of Colorado. So J is the first initial, Watson is the last name, or J is the first name initial, Watson is the last name in full. 2011 is the year it was published. Nursing is the book title in italics, and University Press of Colorado is who published it, which answers the question, how do you find it? Well, just contact the University Press of Colorado, and they'd be more than happy to either sell it to you directly or put you in touch with someone who will sell it for them. Now, if you are used to APA 6th edition, which has not been used for a couple years now, but if you used APA 6th edition in a previous part of your studies, you might be asking about the location information, the city and state. Well, that information is no longer required in APA 7th edition. It was in APA 6th, but publishing has changed a lot. It used to be that you'd have these very different versions of books because of how the publishing trade worked, and nowadays it's basically the same book published, whether it's in London or whether it's in Washington, D.C., and online distribution has changed many things. So no longer required, do not include the city and state, just give us this information here. Now, if you've got another author, well, you will need to include their name as well. And even if it's just two authors, you're going to put a comma and then an ampersand before that second author's name. If you got three, separate the first and second with a comma, and then the second and the third with a comma and the ampersand, and so on and so forth if you add more authors. Now, if you have a journal article, then we have some additional information that goes in there, because it's not just what is the article itself called, but part of how do you find it includes, well, where was it published? In this case, in a journal called Asian Perspective, Volume 31, Issue 1, and it's pages 127 to 167 of that journal volume. So we have that additional information, but it's still answering that question, how do you find this information? Now, what if you are using a different type of information? If your source is a video? Well, it's same idea. We just have different and length of information depending. So in this case, for YouTube video, you cite the channel name, the channel name that the video was published on. Now, sometimes this is exactly the same as the speaker in the video. Sometimes it's not. In the case of Jeremy Johns, who is a movie reviewer, it is the same. Now, YouTube videos are also published with the month and date information exposed. And so we include that as well. You can see that we got the title, Reminiscence-Movie Review, and also in square brackets, not italicized, video to indicate that it's a video. YouTube, that's the publishing platform, so that's answering the how do you find it, as well as that direct link because it's an online only resource. Now, if you have a journal article, it's increasingly likely that it will be available online, and that they will also have something called a DOI, which is a particular type of URL that's supposed to always lead to wherever the article is living. So if you have that, include it. but some older journals don't have that because they predate that. All right, so a couple other things I want to call your attention to. One is the different sets of capitalization rules used here. If we look at that journal article title, The East China Sea Dispute, Context Claims, Issues and Possible Solutions, you'll note that it's capitalized in what's called sentence case, which is just exactly how a sentence is normally capitalized in APA style. Now, the title of the journal itself, Asian Perspective, that is capitalized in title case, which, among other things, is in APA style, every word with 4 or more letters gets the first letter capitalized. Now, if we look at that YouTube video, we'll see that the title of video also uses sentence case. And if we look at the book here, that the title of the book uses sentence case as well. So just something to keep track of. It's always helpful to look at an example to get that visual correspondence and say, ah, yes, that does look the way it should. Now, are you required to have a copy of the APA manual? Well, it's helpful to have a copy of the publication manual, the American Psychological Association, 7th edition, but you can find most of the common examples online. Now, if you're a doctoral student, you'll be using a great variety of resources, including some very specific ones with very specific formatting, and so you would save yourself a lot of time and trouble by getting a copy of the manual. But if you're not a doctoral student, chances are you can do fairly well with the resource we're going to talk about later, which is APA Style Central. All right, so let's talk about how to cite some of those sources that were being referenced. Well, it's going to answer most of the same type of questions, but not as much information as before. Who wrote or presented it? That's the author. And when was it published? In this case, just the year. And if you've got a quotation, where exactly it came from in that source, the page number, the paragraph number, or the timestamp. So this is a shorter list because we don't want to interrupt the flow of ideas in a sentence or a paragraph. So we have normally just the author and the year. So if we're not quoting, it's going to look like Valencia, 2007, or Jeremy Johns, 2021. And if we are quoting, we just add that page number or the timestamp as the case may be. If it's a range, well, we just include the beginning and end of the range. And if it's all included on that one page or on that 1 second of the video, then that's all we give. All right, so let's talk about how to cite some of the sources that are specifically found in HIED 622's assignment number 1. Now, one of the reasons we selected this one is that there is an unusual variety of sources here. For one thing, we have some Wikipedia entries. More on that later. We also have, this looks like a book chapter, a journal article published online, a newsletter perhaps, and a TED Talk, which is a video, but a video not published on a platform like YouTube. So there may or may not be all the information they expect on the YouTube video. All right, so we're going to break down these in a moment, but let's just take a quick look at the rest of the assignment and see where this is heading. So this assignment asks you to take on the persona, to write as if you were the director of a residence life program at a small college, and you're asked to give a talk to faculty that is evidence-based, which is to say that you're going to do some research and write about things with citations to back you up, rather than just referring to your professional experience and things you know instinctively from having done this for however long you did. And this is going to take the form of a 3 to 5 page paper formatted in APA style. And it does say here, the second bullet, that you should be using additional sources besides these ones, and that you are required to have excellent sentence and paragraph construction. So we'll come back to that last part later. All right, so I mentioned APA Style Central before, And this is a very helpful resource. It was actually released with APA 7th edition, and it has a guide to many different common types of references. So let's take a look at that right now. So I've got this pulled up, and let's say we're going to look for that Wikipedia article. Well, ask yourself the question, what type of source is this? Well, it's a textual work. I mean, Wikipedia, you read that. So if we scroll down to there, we find, oh, here, Wikipedia entry references. And if we click on that, it'll show us an example reference and examples for how to cite it. Now, in this case, there's something that is helpful to know here, that because Wikipedia entries can be edited at any time and changed, you want to be linking to the specific version of the article that you read. And so in this case, well, let's talk about how to get that. First, we're going to go to Wikipedia, and then we are going to look up the article here. You could just go directly to this using the URL on the website, but we end up at the same place anyway. Now you'll note that this URL is the short form. It just gives us however the article is today. And if we want to get the specific version that we're looking at, you want to go to View History here. And we're looking for, okay, this is the most current version. So you'll go ahead and right-click or control-click if you're on a Mac and select Copy Link Address. All right, at this point, we're going to jump over to my copy of the APA course paper template, where I'm just going to put this directly into the reference section, which is a good habit. You start using the source, immediately put it in your reference section, then you don't forget about it, and it's easy to fill in the details here. So what's this going to look like? Well, following the example we saw on the APA Styles Central page, we're going to type in the name of the article, and then we're going to have the publication year. I'm going to come back to that a little bit. We're going to have more than the publication year, actually. And we're going to have that link there. Now, you might be asking, hold on. How do we know the exact day and month that it was published? Well, if we go back to the page here, you'll see that it tells us here, not just the month and the day, but also the time. So we're not going to put the time in, that's not required here. That's going above and beyond, and the link will get us to the right version anyway. But in this case, we see, oh, so this was last updated on August 20th. Great. So we just go to our Word document, 2021, August 2020. Sorry, August 20, 2021. All right, and that's all we need for referencing that. And if we're going to be citing this article, well, you can see the basic format that's going to be used here. When you're citing it, to show that this is the title of the article and not an author named Oil Painting, then you just put that in quotation marks rather than the normal without. Okay, so same idea for the other Wikipedia entry. You know, the title will be a little bit longer, but it's going to be the exact same format. Let's take a look at the other types of sources that you're required to use here. Well, let's back up. And a generational approach to understanding students. All right, so I have gone ahead and I've downloaded a copy of this article here. Let's go ahead and bring that up. And you will see that it tells us at the top, oh, this is a chapter. We get the title of the chapter, we get the author's names, and if we scroll down here, we see, oh, this was published in something called New Directions for Student Services, number 106, in the summer 2004, and the publisher was Wiley Periodicals. Now, this leads to a question for what exactly New Directions for Student Services is. Now, it's not a journal article because we see that it's described as a chapter, meaning a chapter in a book. So while you will have volumes numbered in this kind of sequence, this is actually a book in a series. So we're citing a chapter that's in a book in a series. Okay, so how do we find that out? Now, this is one of those things where we'll first want to go back to APA Style Central and see if we can find something just on this. So we're looking for a textual reference here. So let's start out here, books, and well, let's go for chapter and edited book. That sounds about right. And we'll find that we get a couple examples here. So let's see if we have something that corresponds here. Well, we get a variety of ones, but I'm not seeing any in a series. So step back here and do a search for series, just a word search. Doesn't come up. All right, so this is one of those reasons why you might want to have the APA manual in hand, because it does actually include specifics for this. Now, if you have a copy of the manual, you can turn to pages 323 and 324, and then to the corresponding section 9.20, which is on page 292 in the APA manual. Short version, you used to have to include the series information in APA style. In APA 7th, you don't. So the fact that it is part of the series is not going to come up here. The fact that it is number 106 is, so how is that going to look? So it's a little confusing. Let me run by that again. If it was each series had a different title, you would have both the title of this specific one and the separate title of the series. But we're going to treat this as if it were a volume in a multi-volume work. So basically number 106 is volume 1, number 106 is going to be volume 106, number 107 would be volume 107. So it's one of those things where it doesn't quite fit into the shorter list of examples here. It's an adaptation, and you have that explanation for how to navigate between those different things in the APA manual. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So first off, we need to add the author information here. So that's going to be starting with the first author's last name, and then we're going to abbreviate both their first and middle initials. Then we're going to add a comma and an ampersand. And then we're going to add the second author's last name and their initial. And then the publication year, well, we got that at the bottom, that's 2004. And now we need to have the additional information. So first off, we're going to put in the title of the article, the title of the book chapter, which is going to be in sentence case. So that's a generational approach to understanding students. And then this is in a book. So that's going to be introduced here. And now we have a question that's not been answered yet, which is who edited this particular volume? And here we have to do a little bit more research. So I went ahead and took a look at the publisher website, and found that in this case, for this specific volume in the series, Michael Coombs and Robert DeBard were actually the editors for the volume. So they would appear twice. Now, it's important to note that they are not the um, the sole authors of this, because we see, oh, there's these other people who wrote different chapters here. But because they're separate editors from the authors, generally speaking, we do include them in multiple places. All right, so well, let's go ahead and look at the template again, where we're filling in the information. And then this comes in a slightly different information order. You can see that we're giving the initials first rather than later when we're listing the editors. And what is this? New directions in new directions for student services. And then with the slightly unusual format here, that would be summer 2004. Now, I'll tell you that this is a slightly odd source because partway through the series, they decided to start categorizing it as a journal, but back when this was published, it was actually still being treated as a book series, a multi-volume book series. So we're going to get the page range, and that's going to be that is 5 to 16. And then the publisher. All right, so we're not quite done here because there's something that I want you to keep an eye on. Remember when I said that book titles are given in the references in sentence case? That includes if it's for a book chapter. So new directions for student services, that should be lowercase. This is one of those things where if you were citing one of the latest things where they've reclassified it as a journal, then you would be capitalizing that, but you also wouldn't be including the editor information. So slightly weird thing. If in doubt, just send us an email to onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. There are some cases where you can go more than one way, and we are happy to weigh in. And just be aware that Microsoft Word may try and autocorrect the capitalization, but it is actually supposed to be that way. Okay, let us go back to our slides and see what other types of sources we have here. Well, we have the Millennial Model. Okay. So I've gone ahead and opened this up, and let's take a look at what this is. So this appears to be something a little bit different. So this is an article that's being published on this website. We need to find out, is it just something that was published on the website, or is it part of a journal or something like that? And Life Course Associates is the name of the website, and the publisher. And it appears to be something that's just a freestanding thing here, which happens. You know, there's many companies that publish things and put it online. And we'll just check and see there's nothing else there. So, all right. So how would we cite this? Well, we've got our who wrote it, we've got our when it was published, we've got what it's called, and then how to find it. Well, it's on the Life Course Associates website, at this URL. All right, so that's all we need to get to work here. So let's jump back to our template. We do want to make sure that everything in this template is alphabetized by the first author's last name. So that means that this is going here. All right, we've got our author name. We need the publication year now out. And because it's just an article published like without any other identifying information, we are going to include the month and the day, just as we would have for a newspaper entry. And where was this published? This is on the life course. Oh, sorry, we need the title first. The Millennial. So the title of the article itself is going to be in sentence case. And then there's a question of, okay, so how do we cite the name of the website that it's published on? And well, this is a question where I would go back to APA style central. And if we take a look at this and see, look at reference examples, what we're looking for a textual thing that is published on a website. So we have this indication, use the web pages and websites category only when it doesn't fit in better in another one. All right, well, let's take a look here what we have. All right, let's take a look at web page on a website. And these won't cover everything, but it'll give us the basic idea, which is to say we have the author, the date, then we italicize the title of the piece, then have the website regular, non-italicized, and then the URL. Okay, all right, so coming back to here, we're going to grab that URL and going back to our template here. All right, we need to have the title of the web page, which is going to be Life Course Associates, and the URL. And then looking back at this, we see, oh, yes, we need to italicize the title of the article. And there we have it. All right, so what else do we have on our list here? We have, an article on the APA website itself. All right, let's take a look at that one. Now, if you were to just copy and paste the information here, you would find that, well, we'd have information in the wrong order for starters and missing the date. So don't do that. Let's go to the source itself and figure out what information goes here. And we see, okay, so this is a feature article, and it tells us up here, oh, the title of this publication is The Monitor on Psychology. This was in the June 2006, volume 37, number 7. Oh, okay. So this is being treated, this is essentially, we're going to treat this as we would a journal article. We got all the information there. It tells us the print version was on page 68. We don't care about the 7-minute read, but let's go ahead and start formatting this information. And it is helpful to look and see if there's any, not just a subtitle there, but any additional text there. We'll talk about how to include that because all this is generally speaking part of the title, just broken down into the main title, the subtitle, and then the tertiary title. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go back to that template. And again, we want to go by the first author's last name. So in this case, we have Muncie, C. And then when was this published? Well, this is going to be 2006 because it's a journal. We're treating it as a journal. We don't include the month information because the volume and issue makes that redundant. All right, now if you just copy and paste, you'll end up with something like this. Not great. But if you click on this little paste options button and use keep text only, then it looks much cleaner. And so we add a period there. This is all part of the title of the article, so it should be in sentence case as we have here. And we're missing that hanging indent here. There are a couple ways you can get that back. One is to use the keyboard shortcut for hanging indent, which would be Control-T on a PC, Command-T on a Mac, or just go ahead and select APA reference from our list here. And that adds it automatically. All right, we need the title of the journal, and that is Monitor on Psychology. So we put that in italics, comma, and then the volume number, which told us at the top was 37, that's also in italics. And then in parentheses, the issue, that's 7. And then the page, which is just 68. All right. And then we also want to include a URL to this, because I mentioned that when there's a URL or DOI available, we include that. Great, we've got this. So we've got one more source that we want to grab here. So let's go back and take a look at the slides. So this is that last one, the TED Talk. All right. Now as it happens, this is a TED Talk that is available on YouTube. Some are, some aren't. It kind of depends on the state of the people who are putting it up and what they decided. But because it's on YouTube, we do have access to more information. And because the version specifically was viewed through YouTube, we're going to link to it as if it were any YouTube video. So what are we going to include? Well, if you looked at the slide, you might think that the author would go down as Jeffrey Jensen Arnett. But remember, a YouTube video, we cite the channel name rather than whoever happens to be the speaker or speakers. Because the channel name is the one that put it out there under their name, TEDx Talks. So, all right. So we're going to go ahead and we're first going to put in TEDx Talks as our author name. Great. I'm going to go ahead and type that in the background. Make sure that you get the same capitalization, and in case a word overrides you, make sure that you change that back. All right, so what about our publication date? Well, for a YouTube video, that's going to be April 28th, 2015. We'll spell out the month name, and we're going to follow that format of year, comma, month, day that you saw being used in some other resources. So again, this is 2015. And April 28th, period. All right, now what's the title of this going to be? Excellent question. So the title is going to be exactly what is here in the title field. So we're going to grab that and we're going to head back to that template and paste that in there. Again, we're going to select keep text only. And ordinarily, we would reformat this to be in sentence case, but it actually already is, because this is formatted, capitalized just the same way as a sentence. This name, it's a proper noun, and this is a proper noun too. So that's actually good just the way it is. We put a period at the end. Great. Now, what goes next? Well, this is a video. So before this period, we're going to put video. And remember, if we go back to APA Style Central here, and we look at the formatting for a YouTube video, remember, for a YouTube video, we actually italicize the title of the video itself, and after the title block, after this whole thing, then we put the name of the platform that we accessed it on, which is YouTube. All right, so back to the Word document. So this part, all of this gets italicized, not this note, video, and square brackets. YouTube. And now we put the link. Well, how do we get the link? Well, there are two answers here, neither of which are correct, but one is, neither of which are incorrect, but one of which is more correct for our purposes, because APA style emphasizes conciseness. And this link here, that does get you to the video. It also has some other stuff, like it makes this start 12 seconds in, so skip the intro, and make sure that you see more things in the channel afterwards. Well, that's not as concise as it can be. If we go to the share link here, however, we get this nice abbreviated thing that doesn't take up a whole lot of space in our reference list. And so that's the preferred thing. That's the ideal thing to take. So we've copied that to our clipboard and back to our references here. That goes at the end. There we go. If we had included the link that was originally embedded in the course website, that would take us more than this one line. It would just look a little bit less tidy. So we use the most concise and precise version available. Just like here, we used the precise link to the version that we looked at. So even if that changes, it remains the same thing. All right, so we've got our entries here. They're in alphabetical order. Great. So this is a good time for us to go back and talk about synthesis a little bit. So why is synthesis important? Well, this rubric specifically says that you are supposed to have a well-organized paper with excellent sentence and paragraph construction. So it's a good thing to talk about what that means. Now, an excellent sentence should be clear about what it's describing, specific. For things that require evidence to back it up, we want to make sure we have citations in those. But we also want to see how the paragraphs are arguments, where the sentences relate to each other clearly and provide an overall argument where it's not just you're summarizing this is what people said, but also creating new meaning that relates to the specific situation that you're writing for. And that's where I'll tell you that we have two things that are very important that go into this in far more detail than we have time here. We have a dedicated analysis and synthesis webinar that I've linked at the top, and also our Intro to Graduate Writing in APA Style webinar, which will look at these things knit together in a little bit more detail. So the Intro to Graduate Writing in APA Style webinar will give you an idea of how the paper should look, and the analysis and synthesis webinar really focuses on paragraph construction and how to write excellent paragraphs. All right, so synthesis. Well, we've got two related things here. The word has a slightly different meaning in different concepts. In biology, synthesis refers to producing chemical compounds via reactions between simpler materials. And in writing, that means we're combining or applying information together to form something new. So in biology, synthesis is not just mixing stuff together. It has to combine and create this new set of compounds. And in writing, we need to do more than just summarize the information. And how do we do that? Well, we're forming an argument, and we show the argument using phraseology like logical bridges. So for example, Williams 2021 recommended blah. That is summary. But if we follow with a sentence that says, therefore the dean should, whatever, that is giving a recommendation. We know that because of the use of the word should, and that therefore is saying, oh, because of this stuff before, or in light of the things mentioned, what should be done is this. And that's saying, okay, so we're taking that stuff that was previously discussed, and based on that, we have this recommendation. The dean should, whatever you're saying they should. Or the faculty should, as the case may be. Now, it's usually not a very convincing argument if you just give one piece of information and say, oh, we should do this. People are skeptical, and rightly so sometimes. So you want to give, when you can, more than one piece of information in support. And that could involve summarizing more than one source or pointing out that sources are in agreement, as you see with the second example. Williams 2021 recommended that blah. This aligns with Hahn's 2020 recommendation that blah. Therefore, the dean should this. And this kind of argument gives you a more excellent paragraph, because it's not saying, well, based on this one source, which could just be isolated, saying, well, no, there's not only did Williams recommend that, but it aligned with Hahn's earlier recommendation, and therefore we should do that. And there are many different ways that you can phrase it, but they're united by the presenting information, in this case through summaries, and then saying how that fits together. That's the this aligns thing. And you could also indicate it as similarly, comma, Hahn 2020 recommended that blah. But the effect would be the same, because this is leading towards that logical bridge. Therefore, or as a result, or because of this, or in light of this, the dean should, whatever you're saying they should. Another example, today's students strongly benefit from whatever the thing is. And then you cite the multiple sources. Author 1, comma, and then their year. Author 2, comma, and then the year. And remember, just include their last names if it's just regular author name. But if you were referring to a YouTube video, you would give the channel name there, like Jeremy Johns, comma, 2020. Or TEDx Talk, comma, 2021. And then, therefore, new faculty should, whatever it is you're recommending. All right, that's all the time we have today. I hope that we have enlightened you, we've clarified how to cite different sources, that you understand, and particularly how to cite and reference the sources that are required in this assignment, and that you know where to go looking if you want additional information on synthesis, on forming strong sentences and paragraphs of the standard required. And if you need information, you can contact us directly via email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. You can schedule an appointment through our WC Online website, and go to the Online Writing Center website to view all of our different resources available. Have a good day.